Well, hello. hopefully the internet holds up today. I see some pausing. Um, there's more people in the hotel tonight than there was previously. I see some yellow, it's going to red, and it goes to green, and I see some drop frames, so in particular right now. So hopefully the hope is that this internet connection cleans up a little bit, hopefully, and I can do a somewhat good stream today. Anyway, if you haven't joined before, my name is Jacob Jewett. You've joined the Jacob Jewett IT Training Consulting live stream. I do this live stream twice a week. I do it on Sunday and I do it on Wednesday of every week. The only week I've missed so far is Thanksgiving week, so hopefully that doesn't become a habit. But I do these live streams again, as I said, Sunday and Wednesday, and I do them from 9 p.m. Eastern Time and 6 p.m. Pacific Time, and I'll run them usually for about an hour to 2 hours. It depends on how I feel at the time, and tonight I'm a little bit tired. I'm still trying to get used to the time zone and all that stuff, so it's a little fun right now. My stream health is like terrible right now, so hopefully it clears up a little bit better. But again, it's kind of due to the hotel being quite packed tonight. They got some kind of event going on, and it's taking what internet they have, which is pretty crappy to start with, and turning it pretty much to crap. So just gonna have to do with what we gotta do here. So tonight I actually do have a topic, and and believe it or not, it's from some most recent experience, and tonight is a bit of do as I say, not as I do, because what I'm going to talk about tonight is something I'm also guilty of. So in this talk, I'm a bit of a hypocrite, and I do realize that. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about this subject is because I realize it's one of my weak points, along with most IT professionals out there. It is a typical weak point of us professionals, and it just again, as I said, do as I say, not as I do, and know that even though I'm being a hypocrite this time around, that in the process of being a hypocrite, I do realize that I am guilty of the same thing that I'm talking about, and so therefore I basically understand that I realize it as well, and I'm trying to improve on it as well as most other techs should. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is I'm going to talk about documentation, and along with learning about customer skills and soft skills in the IT profession, and learning how to treat people and handle people correctly without insulting them or belittling them, and being able to communicate with people. The other one that's really important, and you don't know how important it is until you're put into the situation, but the other thing that's really important is documentation. Documentation is a huge thing, and unfortunately a lot of people in our industry either ignore it completely or don't give it enough attention. It's something that should get more attention than it does. Okay, so and documentation is a problem not only at like the corporate level, where it should be done a lot more, but it's also an issue when you get down to being an MSP or even a private technician, where you're going out and helping customers. And it's something that I've noticed for a while, and even with myself have done my best to document everything I do, but I do realize that sometimes you get caught up in the minutia of what you do every day. of trying to get something done or fixed for a client. So sometimes that documentation part of your job doesn't only get put to the side, but sometimes it gets completely ignored because you're so involved in the process of really doing your best to handle your clients. So, but again, it's something that's covered in every certification exam, and it's something that we should really focus on. Now, this is a topic that, since the internet is going so crappy right now, I think I've dropped, 20% at this point. I've dropped about 20% of the frames so far, so this video may be shoddy. I don't know how shoddy it's going to be until I watch the archive after. So again, I may have to cover this topic again. It may be hard to understand because of the choppiness of the internet. I was hoping that they would have a landline, but that's not the case. So going back to the topic, which is documentation. Documentation is by far one of the most important parts of being an IT professional, and it's one of the most overlooked parts of being an IT professional. And I found it very hard as being an MSP or a service provider and going in after another technician into an environment where the customer is asking you to do something and the previous tech left no documentation at all. Now, there's multiple reasons why these techs do this kind of thing. When you're a private technician, like let's say you're a consultant and you run your own business, some of these consulting companies or some of these private consultants will not leave documentation behind with the customer because they're afraid of the customer replacing them with someone else. And they're afraid that if someone else gets a hold of their documentation, they'll understand the system and they in turn will no longer be needed. And I mean, at a time I saw some kind of merit to this, but unfortunately it's not really, it's counterintuitive or counterproductive when you are a technician and you go help out a client and you leave no documentation behind. Because let's face it, if you're a good technician and you know what you're doing and you know how to do your job and you know how to treat the customer's going to keep you. Okay, they may every once in a while decide to go with a kid down the street, and then they'll hire the kid down the street and very quickly find out that that was the wrong thing to do. They'll very quickly find out that the reason why they're paying you more money is because you know what the hell you're doing, versus the kid down the street. You know, he may know how to do a couple things. He may have built his own computer, he or she, but you know, in the end, they don't really have a clue what they're doing. They were just really good at searching Google at the time that they were building their computer, or they're doing this or that. So, you know, being afraid to leave documentation behind for a client because you think that that client will no longer call you back or the client will easily replace you is just, again, the wrong way to look at things. Because, again, if you're doing your job, if you're treating the client right, if the client's happy with you, and you serve them above and beyond what would be expected, they're not going to get rid of you. They're going to be less likely to get rid of you because they know that if they go somewhere else, they're not going to get the same level of service. So it's very important that you take that in consideration and realize that documentation isn't only for the client, it's for yourself. It's for you when you need to go back, and let's say you have a lot of clients. You got 20, 25 clients. Let's just say hypothetically that you have that many clients. The problem will become eventually that you have so many clients that you'll either, one, have to standardize how you service each client, meaning their networks have to be exactly the same, or number two, no one can remember that much information and you'll miss things. So it's very important that you do document like everything about your client's network. What the incoming public IP is, what the outgoing structure is. Do you have a DMZ in between your public and your private? What the IP scheme is internally, how your shares are set up, how your permissions are set up. A administrator password that the client can use if they absolutely have to get into their system for whatever reason and you're not reachable. You've gone on vacation with your family and you don't have someone to cover your spot. Or maybe you have a friend that is a technician that is good and you trust in handling that client. You need to be able to tell that friend, like, hey, at my client's location, there's a binder. If you change anything, please update that binder. But if you need to find your way around to help the client, here's my informational binder. This is where you find the information about the network. So it not only helps the client if, let's say, they're really unhappy with you, you do terrible service, but you've documented it. It helps them find another technician. Will you be replaced? Possibly, but maybe they'll go with that other technician and find out that the grass is not always greener on the other side, and maybe they'll also find out that technician has a weird way of doing things, or doesn't document like you did, or doesn't inform them like you did, and they'll measure up what benefit, what cost analysis and benefits they're getting out of having you or this other technician. And in the past, I will tell you that if there was times where I would provide a client with a binder. When I had my business, I always had binders that I would provide to my clients. In that binder had their network structure, how it was laid out, the incoming IPs out, and any public IPs that they had if they were hosting something on site. It had my DHCP settings. It had DNS. It had basically, if that network went completely down, if like the wrath of God came onto my client and they had to replace all their hardware and reset up their network exactly the way it was when I set it up the first time, they could through that binder. Now, I knew as a technician, I knew that my client could easily go somewhere else, take that binder, give it to the other company, and that company would be able to basically get up and run with it. And as I said, you can't fear that, and I didn't fear it. Was it a bummer to lose a client? Yeah, it was. And sometimes it was a benefit too, because every once in a while you'll get that client that is more demanding than what you're actually making off of them. Like especially if you have like a service contract and they just bombard you with stuff and you can't really do much about it. So it doesn't hurt. It works both ways, right? And I will tell you that a lot of times when I lost a client because some Joe Schmo came in and said I could offer a better service and a better price, it wasn't long before that client would come back to me, or they would suggest someone else to me. So, for my services, because I thought I did a good job at least setting up the initial network, right? So, I'll admit to a couple mistakes where, I set up a customer's network and everything was hunky-dory and working fine, and I would get busy with another customer, and that current customer would sometimes feel like, I kind of left them behind. And, so that, when you have your own business, there's some balance there. There's, you got to be able to take on new clients. At the same time, you got to be able to support the clients you have. And if you don't have that balance, you will lose clients. The best way to have a separation is to have that documentation. Is to create as much documentation as you can so that that client is not having to basically pay someone all over again to either reset their network or relearn their network or whatever case that new technician has for charging them obscene amount of money, you're saving them from some of that trouble by having documentation. So that again, that's at the level of the simplest level of being a consultant or someone that runs their own home business as a computer consultant. So it's really important that you have that documentation. The other thing that it falls into is, let's say that you work with an MSP provider, a managed service provider, and you have hundreds of clients, okay? Let's say you have like 100, 125 clients. At that level, you're not going to be able to support all your clients by yourself. You're going to have a team of people. You're going, you may have started out as a guy that works in, out of his garage, and then you find yourself building, having an office or renting office space or what have you. And when you do that, you'll find that you have to hire people, and you have to trust these people to go out to your clients, take care of your clients, and be the face of your company while you're in the back end trying to either gain more clients, or you're trying to make the clients that you have happy. So you may be going out to lunch with clients, you may be going playing golf with clients, and you may be shaking hands and patting backs to have that clientele. Or even you may be going out to these possible clients and doing assessments on their network and doing the initial setup and sale of that network. And then you have to trust your guys that you have hired to support those clients after you've done that initial setup. So it's very important that you have, again, that documentation that you've built up since you were a little guy. Now you're a big guy in the game. You're an MSP provider, or you're working with some bigger clients, and you need to have that documentation so that your people can go back, refer to that documentation, whether it's through a ticketing system, through a knowledge base that you've built. If you're small enough that you're like using Evernote or even OneNote, something. You have to have documentation, whether it's a physical document or it's a digital document, some kind of documentation that allows people that come in behind you, whether they're another technician or the technician that you've hired to work with you, to be able to service the client to the best of their abilities and at the highest level available. So we've covered now, your private consultant onto your MSP. Let's go even higher. Let's go to small, medium to large business. So let's go to corporation. Let's cover it all there. Documentation is also important there. And the problem that happens most of the time is you'll get a crew of guys, and this has happened at many of both of the corporations I've worked for, and it's also happened at the MSPs I've worked for and stuff like that. You'll hire a guy and you expect them that when they come into work that they know what they need to know to get the job done. You expect that they have the knowledge on the subject matter. The problem is you can know a product, okay? I can know Zscaler. I can know an IPAM solution, right? I can go and do the training on that. But every technician has their own way of setting up those particular tools. And if you don't know their scheme or their schema, I guess it would be the best term to call it. If you don't know that, there is still a learning curve to it, okay? And the problem with corporations and small, large, medium and large companies that have tech departments, like dedicated tech departments, a lot of times these guys are riding by the seat of their pants. A lot of times they're trying to, just like the small-time user and the MSP is trying to do, they're trying to service their clients being coworkers or what have you, or external clients. They're trying to service these people, and they're trying to do it fast as as possible. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll go take care of an issue, and once they're done, they go on to the next one. Or if, let's say, they're setting up a solution within the business, let's say like a vulnerability management system, or even antivirus centrally managed system, or a SCCM or something like that. SCCM being essentially controlled like update management system, right? Let's say that they're setting that up. They're trying to get it done. They're trying to meet deadlines, and the thing that always gets put to the wayside and that always fails to be done in the end is usually documentation. And so what happens is, and this is going to happen to you, and maybe you're the one doing it to the company, the chances that you're going to stay with the same company your whole career are very slim. Okay, there's very few technicians I know, and maybe enough that I can, or little enough that I can count them on one hand, like 3 people I know that have worked for the same company their whole career. Everyone else I know moves from company to company. They'll stay for a while, they'll see if they've gotten a promotion or something like that, or that they've grown professionally. And if they've done that and they still feel like they're growing, they'll stay with that company. However, if they're not, they may be a go-getter and want to go work for another company. So what happens is they'll put in their 2-week notice, and then all of a sudden, that person that's been doing that task for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, whatever the case may be, now has to be able to document everything that they do in the 2-week span that they've put in their 2-week notice. Okay, and basically leaves the person that's replacing them up a creek, because what they'll basically, I've had it to where a person that I'm replacing, because they've decided to move on to another job, I'll come in behind them, and I've literally been given 1-page document on a whole system, like literally a 1-page document, and half the, not even a quarter of the page covers what I have to know about the particular system and the configuration of the particular system that I am now supporting. So what ends up happening is, as a technician, as someone that's coming in after someone else leaves the company, I am now wasting the company's time. Instead of handling issues and being able to take care of clients, I am sitting there and trying to learn the system. Not trying to learn the technology, because I know the technology. I've worked with the technology. I've been in and out of it. But there's, different levels of work you do on these systems. And, so you'll get into a situation where you're not able to support your client. You're not able to support the business that you work for a period of time, because you have a learning curve. A learning curve that could so much be negated by or shortened by the fact that if the person before you had actually documented their work rather than keep all the information in their head, would allow you to hit the ground running. All right, not only make yourself look good, but here's what most technicians forget, is when they do not document their job and what they do, okay, it doesn't make them look good either, right? So if you don't document and you take off, the new guy is going to do nothing but freaking badmouth you the whole time. Yeah, they were a great technician, but all the information was in their head. I got nothing. I can't do anything. I have to figure this out, right? So, and the other thing is, once you're gone, you really have no way of protecting yourself as the previous person, right? Because the new person can basically blame everything for the first 2 or 3 months on you, because you left no documentation. Okay, and the tech community is small. I mean, it's a big world, but it's a small world when it comes to the type of work we do, the type of work of being a technician. So a lot of that information gets around, and you'd be amazed how small this world is, and how many people hear about you in the long run. And you can either have them hear about you in the good light of, like, yeah, let's put in my example again, do as I say, not as I do kind of situation. But let's say me, if someone came in behind me and I had everything documented, they're going to say, well, Jacob, he went on to work for A, B, and C company, but Jacob left behind this really good documentation. We were able to come in and take care of the system, and hey, maybe if you have to come back again, there's not such a bad thing. There's not such a bad taste in the company's mouth if you say, oh, well, I went and tried to go work for A, B, and C company, and I wasn't really happy there. I liked my job where I was. I made a mistake. I would like to come back. Would you guys be interested in having me back? Well, if you left initially, if you left with no documentation, no information for them to work off of, you think they're going to want you back? Probably not, right? Because they're just going to get more of the same. So it's documentation is like everything. Okay, so I know I'm harping on it, but it is a good topic, right? Because documentation works on so many levels. So it works on, first of all, documenting your configuration of your network, because again, you could start, especially in a corporation, you can start supporting one system or one type of application, and the next thing you know, you're an owner of another type of application or system, and you could go move on to that, and then the person that was supporting the system you used to support can all of a sudden just decide one day that they're not coming to work and they're no longer going to be there, and then you have to go back and support that system that you haven't supported in 5 to 6 months. And I don't know about you, but sometimes information that I knew day in, day out, if I don't do something with it in 5 to 6 months, is I've slept since then kind of situation. It'll take me a little bit to get back to speed with it. Now, I'll know how to navigate around the system, but some of the settings that I may have set specifically for different locations may be something that I have to refresh on, right? Because again, I'm not going to remember everything. If I have to replace my knowledge with a new system that I'm now supporting, I'm not going to exactly retain the information that I supported before, right? I may be able, again, to navigate through it, but I'm going to need some help remembering that previous information, right? So that documentation helps you there, right? And the other documentation that helps you is if you document how you take care of a client. Let's say you have an issue that has been submitted by a client or a coworker or whoever, and you go work on the issue. You document what the issue was. You document what the fix was. You document your process of mitigating the situation. That might be all fine and dandy, and you submit that ticket, you clear it out, whatever the case is, you rectify that situation. It's better for you that, like, the next time you come to a similar situation, you may have had like 1,000 situations or 1,500 situations before you come back to that same issue you just fixed, right? So in your mind, when you initially fix it, you go, okay, well, I fixed it once, I can fix it again. Well, what happens if, like, down the line, you don't see that issue for another year and a half? And then what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to go through the same searching procedure that you did. You're going to have to go through the same steps that you went through before. When with a couple of key words in a system that manages knowledge bases, and if you got a ticketing system like ConnectWise, or you use something like Commit, or God forbid you have to use Remedy, that's like the crappiest ticket system ever, or Serena, or one of those other systems, they all have knowledge bases built into them, to where if you've completed a ticket previously, you can do a keyword search and find similar tickets to the issue that you're now covering. And you can go see what other technicians did to fix the situation. Because I don't know about you, but last time I checked, I was human, and I'm not perfect. And I'm pretty sure, unless your algorithm or algorithm, if I could say the word correctly, on Google, and you're just watching my video doing that in your computer, you're not perfect either. And guess what? If you're a computer, you're not perfect because humans built you. So if we can all agree that we're not perfect, your solution may be different than the solution of the other technician, and your solution might work, but the other technician's solution might be better. So documentation comes into play there too, because you can take two solutions side by side, look at what one person did versus what the other person did, and very quickly realize, oh, well, maybe they did it better, or maybe they thought of something I didn't think of, right? So it's that falls into play as well. The other thing about documentation that's also important is a way of covering your ass. The good old CYA. Everything about documentation is a little bit of CYA. Cover your ass. That it's not only an acronym, it is a way of life that should exist. Now, previous to Microsoft OneNote, which ties into OneDrive and stuff like that, and is part of even the basic Microsoft Office 365 offering now. Previous to that, I used to get composition notebooks. Composition notebooks, you can typically get them from like Staples or Office Max or Office Depot for about $1.50, and each one has about 200 pages. 100 actual pages, and then, you know, if you use either side, it's 200 pages. The other thing that works also really well is a logbook. You can get a logbook. Typical logbook is about, again, 100 pages, about the same amount of pages as a composition notebook. And what's nice about those is anytime anything significant happened, I would put a date, timestamp, and I would put a brief summary of what happened. Okay, and I called this my CYA book. In OneNote, I now have a tab that I have for my personal notes, and I have it backed up, and that's my CYA notebook now. Instead of using composition notebooks, I use OneNote. And those entries that I do in that notebook are very simple. It's a date, time, and a very short, not even a paragraph, maybe 2 or 3 lines of what significant event happened, what the result was. So that if I feel that it's significant to my career, whether it be positive or negative, I am able to look back at that information if I'm called upon it. Okay, and this has come into play multiple times throughout my career. You know, someone will say, oh, you said this. I'm like, no, I didn't. I remember that meeting. During that meeting, this was discussed, this was discussed, this was discussed, and here was our conclusion, right? At no point did I say anything about what you're trying to say I said. And by the way, if I said that, where's the proof? I have proof through my logbook or through my composition notebook, my CYA book. I have proof in that I made notes. So at this point, I remember more about that meeting than you do, because what you have to say is hearsay versus what I have to say, because I've actually logged it and took the time to make a note about it, right? Composition notebooks and OneNote also work very good for documenting things about clients, right? You may have a client that has a quirk, likes things certain ways, or a client that you need to remember something about that client, that will just put you one step above the next IT guy that tries to go in there. It's every form of documentation you can think of is going to be beneficial to you versus not having the documentation. You may be a kick-ass technician, you may be a kick-ass business person, but at another in one point or another in your career, not having documentation is going to bite you in the ass one way or another. It will eventually bite you. Now, it may eventually bite you as the person that failed to do documentation. It may also bite you as the person that's coming in after someone that failed to do documentation, and then it bites you in the ass then, right? Then you have to explain to your management and the people that you answer to why certain things aren't done in a certain way and why you're not up to speed to something, right? We expect everyone to come into a job that's knowledgeable and be instantly, somewhat, pay back what they're worth, kind of, right? Like, we pay them a certain wage, we expect them to do a certain type of work. Well, I don't know how you expect anyone to do that if you do not have documentation. Now, I've been part of teams where the whole department fails to do documentation, and then everyone's got their heads up their ass trying to figure out who knows what, who knows where, right? Or they don't do documentation, and one of the members of the team goes on to vacation for a week or two, and then they're all stuck with their thumbs up their asses for 2 or 3 weeks until the person gets back from vacation, so they can figure out what the hell's going on. Is that a good policy at any level? No, it isn't. Documentation is everything. That's why in corporations, when we have SOX management and stuff like that, we have what's called change control. And you have to represent your change, you have to apply your change, and you have to tell what happened after and document every part of it. Okay? Is change management a pain in the ass? Yeah, it's a big pain in the ass. And it's also a huger pain in the ass when you have a change management program that is overzealous or too restrictive or gets in the way, right? So that becomes a problem as well. But sometimes you have to put up with fighting whatever you have to fight to get the proper documentation in place, because nothing's worse than coming in and finding out that you had your head up your ass the whole time, or someone made the wrong change in your absence because you weren't there, but they didn't know any better because you didn't leave them any documentation. So who's going to get in trouble for that? Is that going to be the person that made the change because they thought they had to make the change at the time? Or is it going to be you because you didn't document your shit and that person now doesn't know, it can't be at fault because they didn't know that there was a particular quirk with this certain system, right? So, again, it's if anything, it's going to help your career rather than hurt your career, right? So, along with customer service, documentation is like one of the key things that you need to remember, you need to do. And it's something that even I falter on. And by talking about documentation, how great it is and what you should do, as I said in the beginning of the talk, it's something that I myself have to improve on. It's something that I myself am being forced into right now because I'm coming into a situation where some of the systems I am now responsible for weren't fully documented. I mean, literally everything from the time of purchase until the time of full ramp up has not been documented. Now, I could sit there and be a hypocrite and sit there and tell you that these people screwed up on their jobs, but I'm even responsible for some of the mess up, right? Because I've been responsible for turning up new systems that I haven't fully documented because I was in such a hurry to put up the system that I didn't document the actual workings of the system or how I configured it. So if someone else comes in behind me, they got to figure out, how in the hell did I do it? Why did I do it this way? Why did I come up with this solution rather than this other solution? Was there a reason for it, right? All very much easily answered by the fact of, like, if I documented it, they could go to that document and they could understand why I had that way, right? The other thing is too, is like policies. You can't expect someone to follow a certain policy or network policy or a certain way of you doing things without you documenting it and setting the policy, right? You can tell people until you're blue in the face what the policy is, but if they can't pick up a paper in their hand and read the policy, they're going to look at you like you're stupid. Okay? The other thing about documentation that will also bite you in the ass. Let's say you set up a deal or a contract with a client. If you don't include in that contract all the stipulations of your relationship with that client, that relationship can go sour very quickly, right? Because you can go take care of that client and you can walk in one day expecting that, oh, I'm going to walk in, and if I find a computer that is malfunctioning, I'm going to take it back to the office, work on it, and then I'll bring it back here. You know, I'll bring it back to the business that I took it from, right? Well, what if you go in there and the client goes, no. In our agreement, you said that you would be on site every time you need to do something. I don't want you taking the computers off site. Well, sir, I have to charge you for all the hours I'm sitting here. No. When we had our agreement, you said that you would spend as much time as you needed to fix our issue. Well, if you don't have that crap documented, how are you to tell your client that they're wrong? Okay? You may be right. In your mind, you're thinking to yourself, you know, this guy is just trying to rip me off. You may be 100% correct. Okay? But how do you prove that if you did not document, if you did not actually have a signed contract or SLA, or service level agreement? You have to document everything. Documenting will save your ass 100% of the time, unless you document something and you do the opposite of what you documented, right? That's about the only time that documentation is not going to cover your ass, is if you do something opposite of what you actually document. I did A, B, C, and D, but I actually did X, Y, Z, and H, right? Out of order, or whatever the case is. Okay, if the documentation doesn't match what you actually did, it's just as bad as not having documentation at all, right? If I do a configuration of a network and I put invalid IPs into my ingress and degress and what's going out there, right? Then that documentation's no good. It's not as good as the paper it's written on. Or if you're using like Evernote or OneNote or something like that, it's no good in there either if you're not keeping it up to date. So once you create documentation, you also have to keep that documentation up to date. So there's great tools out there. Okay, so I've been mentioning that you could use OneNote. You could also use like Teams for team collaboration. Or if you're doing projects where you require documentation and stuff like that, another tool that's great with that is Wrike. Wrike is WRIKE.com. They have a free version and they have a paid version. You get Teams with the enterprise version of Office 365 or O365 if you want, Microsoft 365. There's a notes component in Google's suite of solutions, right? There's even notes within, if you have an iPad or you have a tablet, there's a notes app usually in there. Maybe not as powerful as like OneNote or Teams or or Reich or one of the other solutions out there, but there's many solutions, right? You may choose a solution such as, let's say you're a small technician. Let's say you're just a consultant and you're doing all the work yourself. You could use something like Spiceworks. Spiceworks is a free utility that you can use. It's ad supported. It's not ad supported on the client side, it's ad supported on the technician side. And it's a very good CMS, or client management system, that you can use to allow your clients to submit tickets and you to document your work. They also have a very robust knowledge-based system. So there's many tools out there, and all you have to do is do the research. And if you don't want to do the research, if you want to ask me questions, well, guess what? That's what these live streams are for. If you have any questions, you are always welcome on any of my live streams to use the chat function and ask a question. I'm always happy to answer the questions. I typically, as I do now, have two systems set up to where if you notice during the live stream, I'm looking at this screen, I'm looking at this screen, and it's because I am looking to see if anyone pops on and asks a question. I really do want to be here to answer questions for people and have good running topics. So yeah, so those are available. If you're watching this this now live stream going to video, if you're watching this after it's streamed live and you're watching a recording of the live stream, you can leave your question or comment in the comment section of the video, and I always check them, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Now, if one of your questions is, hey, I'm running a small business and I would like to have some kind of ticketing system, ask that question. I'll answer it. I have no problem helping you find a solution. So again, my live streams, I do them every Sunday and every Wednesday, and I start at 6 p.m. Pacific time and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm currently in New Jersey. I will be here for the next week and a half, and so my live streams might be a little crappy during that time because I'm having to deal with hotel internet, and hotel internet sucks a big one right now. But hey, it's something. So if you have any questions, leave a comment. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Join me Sunday when I will be live again at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or not, sorry, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, I wish you all the best. Thank you for joining me tonight, and may you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you Sunday. Bye for now.